Um, my name is RJ Cruz, and I'm in History 1301. My topic of choice for this research video was the Civil War and its many battles. I chose this topic because it was a very important time in American history. It really made the country what it is today, and I think without the Civil War, America wouldn't be the way it is today, and it definitely there'd be certain things that would still be going on, such as slavery and different racial things like that. The Civil War. It was the deadliest time in American history. It accumulated more than 620,000 deaths, and there's also many more injuries that people suffered while fighting. It was a time when the northern states they kind of split America into two parts. You have the North, who was called the Union, who were against slavery. They did not like slavery at all. They did everything they could to oppose it. They battled against the South, who was the Confederate States. They were for it. They loved slavery because they were able to use it in their plantations and for their crops. They they were the Confederate. There were many battles that occurred during the Civil War, each one having its own meaning and cause. It really stated what the Civil War was about. Each battle had a different meaning behind it. The Civil War was fought during the 1860s, 1850, 1860s time period. The war began when the Confederates bombarded the Union soldiers at Fort Sumter, South Carolina on April 12, 1861. The war ended in spring of 1865. Robert E. Lee surrendered the last major Confederate army to Captain Ulysses S. Grant at Appomattox Courthouse on April 9, 1865. The last battle was fought at Palmetto Ranch in Texas on May 13th, 1865. The first battle that occurred during the Civil War, it was called the Battle of Bull Run. Uh, it it was not until 3 months after Fort Sumter occurred, and the Union and the Confederate troops met again at Bull Run in Virginia. It was between Washington, D.C. and Richmond, Virginia. Uh, Still believing that the war was a trifling matter that would be over quickly, a number of government officials and spectators from both sides came to observe the battle. So there was spectators on either side of the battle. It was kind of like if you think of it like a big sporting event, but not really because many lives were lost. You have the fans from the Union on one side, and you have the fans of the Confederate on the other. And they're all rooting for their side, watching this battle happen in the middle of this field. So, if you think about it, there was just tons of like fans watching either side kill each other, which was just crazy to think about. Uh, they were also packing picnic lunches to watch this battle go down. They were having picnics while many men were losing their lives during the Battle of Bull Run. Just crazy. At the end of the day, the Union forces had lost and were forced to retreat. So the first battle, the South won. So they're thinking in their minds, they got the momentum. Just keep on going. They're winning right now. They get their slaves. Uh, The loss shocked the Northerners, though, out of their complacency and prompted them to prepare more seriously for the struggle ahead. They realized, oh man, we just lost this battle. We need to get our things together. If we're gonna win this war, we gotta prepare, and we can't not think of the South as just nobody. But on the other hand, the Southerners interpreted the victory as an indicator of an early end to the war, and as a decisive proof that most Northerners did not have the will to fight. They thought the Northerners were just city folk. They couldn't fight. They didn't want to fight. So they were all, yeah, we got this war in the bag already. That's what they thought. Uh, there was another fight called Shiloh. Just as the Northerners were shocked into reality by the first Battle of Bull Run, so too were the Southerners by the Battle of Shiloh in April 1862. Union General Ulysses S. Grant, he engaged Confederate forces at Shiloh, Tennessee, in an incredibly bloody battle. Tens of thousands of men died. By the end of the bloodbath, Grant had won and demonstrated to the Confederates that Lincoln was serious about maintaining the Union. Southerners got the message and dug in for a longer war. They realized, oh man, the North, they're here to fight now, so we need to bunker down and we need to get ready for this long war that's ahead. So they ended up going back and they were ready for this war. Another battle at Antietam. I think it's like say Antietam, yeah. Rather than waiting around for the enemy to attack him, Lee made an aggressive push into the border states to try to defeat the Union on its own turf. So he decided, let's take the fight to the North. If they want to fight, let's take it to them, and we can beat them on their home court. He hoped that the Confederate victory in Maryland would convince the state legislature to succeed. In September 1862, Lee's army met General George McClellan's troops at the Battle of Antietam, which resulted in more than 23,000 casualties, the bloodiest single-day battle of the entire war. So on this day, there was more deaths than the entire war. On one day. So far. There was many other fights that came close. Yeah. Lee was forced to retreat back to Confederate territory, so the Union won that war. They 23,000 casualties. That's just crazy in one day to think about. Another battle was the Gettysburg Battle. The Battle of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, was the largest battle of the American Civil War, as well as the largest battle ever fought in North America, involving around 85,000 men in the Union's Army of Potomac under Major General George Gordon Meade and approximately 75,000 in the Confederacy's army in Northern Virginia. Commanded by General Robert E. Lee, casualties at Gettysburg totaled 23,049 for the Union. There was 3,155 dead, 14,529 wounded, and 5,365 missing. Confederate casualties were 28,063. There were 3,903 dead, confirmed dead. There were 18,735 injured and 5,425 missing. More than one-third of Lee's army suffered in the Battle of Gettysburg. There was all these wars that took place, and each war, men were losing their lives left and right. It's incredible the amount of death that occurred during the Civil War. Then finally, the war came to a close at the last battle. It was a Confederate victory. Well, it didn't this was the last land battle. There was also water battles, but this was the last land battle. It was a Confederate victory that occurred May 12th through May 13th at Palmetto Ranch in South Texas, where word of Lee's surrender had not yet been received. Far across the Atlantic on November 6, 1865, the sea raider CSS Shenandoah surrendered to the British captain. To the ship's crew surrendered in America. They risked hanging as pirates. So at this last battle that occurred in Palmetto Ranch, Lee had already surrendered, but they were not aware of that yet because the word didn't get around. So the communication was very slow at that time, so they weren't aware of that. The death that occurred during this war was incredible. Here's from my research that I looked at the amount of deaths that occurred. At the Battle of Gettysburg, there were 51,000 casualties. At the Battle of Chickamauga, there were 34,624 casualties. Spotsylvania, 30,000 casualties. The Wilderness, 29,800 casualties. Chancellorsville, 24,000 casualties. Shiloh, there's 23,746 casualties. Stones River, 23,515 casualties. Antietam, 22,717 casualties. Second Manus, 22,000 casualties. And Vicksburg, there were 20,000 casualties. There's just an incredible amount of death going on during this war. But the thing that occurred was after that there was still many steps that took place to really fulfill what the Civil War's meaning was. You still had slavery slowly ended after that, but really it didn't because all the racism and it happened and there was like slavery in different ways, if you could say. Many Americans lost their lives, and the population of the United States took a major hit. Even though the United States was split in two different parts, the North and the South, they were still one country as a whole. So that country's population took a major hit. The Civil War. Let's see, go back to my notes here. The Civil War's main goal was to stop slavery. They did not like the North was tired of the slaves being used in the South, and they actually went to war with their own country in order to stop that, which it takes a lot to just split the country into two. And as a state and like the leader of a state, you had to pick which side you want your state to represent. You want it to represent the North, who is against it, or you want it to represent the South, who is for it. And that must have took a lot for the state leader to do that at that time. That was the Civil War, and kind of some of the battles, as you can tell, that it kind of like broke down the main like summary of the Civil War through these battles, and you can tell that the main thing that keeps on occurring in every single battle is lots of lives being lost. So that was kind of a wrap around the Civil War and its background, and I really enjoyed reading about the Civil War. It kind of opened my eyes about just a lot of things that occurred in that time period, and it's crazy to think that's where we were not too long ago. So that's my project. Thank you very much.